Well, hello, how are you today? This is Opa, and we are going to start a new chapter in Genesis. Remember, Adam and Eve are no longer in the beautiful garden. They've been kicked out of the garden because of their sin. And so the Bible says in verse 1 of chapter 4, "And Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord." Okay, now what does that mean? Well, that means that Eve, the first woman, was the first mother, the first lady to have a baby. And here is when she has the very first baby ever born. At least that's what it seems to say. It was the very first baby. His name was Cain. And she thanked the Lord for giving her this baby boy. Verse 2 says, "And she again bare his brother Abel." That means she had another baby. And this baby was another boy, and she called his name Abel. So she had two boys, Cain and Abel. And they were the first two, as far as we know, they were the first two baby boys ever. Okay, and so God now tells us how these boys were. And guess what? They were very different. And I bet you if you have a sister or a brother, I bet you they're very different from you too, right? I know they are. They're very, very different. And that's because God doesn't make copies. God makes everybody special, everybody different. Nobody in the world is like you. And I guess that's a good thing. You wouldn't want a copy of you going around, would you? No. I'm sure you are happy to be you and that everybody else is somebody else. Well, that's what God does. And so, Cain and Abel were two boys from the same parents, but very, very different. And it says, "And Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground." Okay, so what does that mean? What is a keeper of sheep? Well, we would call a keeper of sheep a shepherd. And so mainly Abel liked sheep, but I guess he probably liked animals. He was a person who loved to go out in the field and be with his sheep, and maybe he had a dog, and he knew all the animals, and he loved all the animals, and that was just the best thing you could do for Abel, was give him some time to spend with his animals out in the woods and out in the fields and all of that. He just loved sheep and animals. But Cain was a different kind of boy. He liked the garden. He liked the tiller. It says he was a tiller. I don't know if I read it. But Cain was a tiller of the ground. Well, now that means that Cain loved gardening. He loved to dig up the ground and plant seeds and have a garden and trees and take care of the trees and get the apples and the oranges and the peaches and then from his garden get all the tomatoes and the lettuces and the green peppers and the cabbage and the squash, and oh my, he just loved that. Abel, he wasn't much for the garden. He liked the animals. And Cain, he liked the garden, and he apparently wasn't very much about sheep. He didn't like sheep or animals too much. His favorite thing was his garden. Okay, so we have here two boys, very different. Abel loves animals, loves sheep. Cain, he loves the ground, and he loves gardening and plants. And so we're going to leave it there this time, just two verses, and we will see next time what happens between these two boys who are so very different. Okay? Love you. Goodbye. Have a great day.